What was your I was only gone X minutes. What the hell happened? Story? Someone used a fire extinguisher to put out a grease fire. And it was the carbon type, so the cook thought it was the proper fire extinguisher, and regardless of it being the right kind, it was still the wrong thing to do. The problem was there was a huge vat of grease at the bottom of the rotisserie, and when you turn on a fire extinguisher the spray comes out with such incredible force it splashed all the grease out of the rotisserie. Then that grease is all over the floor and it reignited, spreading fire all over the floor. When you have a huge vat of grease burning there's only one of two things you can do. Close the door to the rotisserie and let it burn itself out. Or toss a bucket of cold grease into the fire. There was a bucket of cold grease near the fire and I kicked it over, put the fire on the floor out. Then I closed the doors to the rotisserie to let it burn itself out. Now a lot of people are thinking, why is cold grease so effective at putting out a fire? Isn't it like tossing gasoline onto a fire? The answer is no, it's nothing like tossing gasoline onto a fire. Cold grease just doesn't catch fire easily. It has to be heated up first, which takes time. The grease cooking in a rotisserie has been heating up for several hours. The reason why the grease in the rotisserie caught fire was that grease is extremely hot and something pushed it over the ignition point. Grease does not mix with water, so water can't put out a grease fire, but grease will mix with other grease. If you dump a bucket of cold grease into a grease fire, what happens is the temperature of the total volume of grease becomes a compromise between the cold and hot, depending on the both heat and volume. If you have enough cold grease, the temperature of the burning grease will be lowered below the ignition point, putting out the fire. If you have a vat of burning grease, if you spray a powerful hose of anything directly into it, it does not matter what kind of fire extinguisher it is, if it's powerful enough, and most of them are, will cause the grease to splash out of the vat and spray all over the kitchen, setting your kitchen on fire. So keep that in mind. If you're using a fire extinguisher, don't jam it into the grease fire. Stand back and use it from a distance. This will probably be buried, but here goes. I wasn't the one gone, but I was in a room where all hell broke loose in a matter of minutes. I was a nurse at the time and a trauma came in where a guy broke both legs after jumping from a second story. It actually wasn't so bad, but we had the x-ray technician bring the portable x-ray machine to the trauma room and snap a couple shots of his legs. When this is done, the guy goes straight to the OR. Sounds intense, but it was an organized trauma. Guy was pretty stable the whole time. X-ray tech leaves along with the rest of the docs, and I'm left behind with a few other nurses cleaning up to prepare for the next trauma to come in. Our trauma coordinator, whose background is in nursing, comes down for a walkthrough, and we begin chatting casually. While this happens, EMS rolls in with a guy and they say they found him unresponsive underneath a parked car, so no way the car hit him, but he's not responding to anything. I give him a huge purple nurple, but not even a peep comes of him. Trauma coordinator notices blood coming from his ear and just mutters sheet, skull fracture. This is where all hell broke loose, as we were not prepared for what was to come. Trauma coordinator shouts at the clerk to stop registering other patients and overhead page and attending to trauma room, along with the level 1 trauma team, highest level, and a respiratory therapist. We wheel the guy into the trauma room. At this point, it's all nurses, so we all know what to do. EMTs are confused, as they suspected it was just a drunk guy sleeping it off, but they were way off point within 2 minutes. His clothes are cut off. We have him hooked to the monitor. 2 ives are being placed in either arm. Our trauma coordinator is putting a cervical collar on him. And another nurse is pulling out RSI, rapid sequence intubation, meds. As our doctors walk in, the guy finds new life and becomes slightly combative, but we can handle. Doctors hear the story and are glad we called a level 1, but not sure why we paged the respiratory therapist. The guy took a turn for the worse when he begins to have a massive seizure. Our trauma coordinator says, "That's why." Doc shrugs his shoulders and says, "Alright, let's tube him." Maybe 5 minutes have gone by at this point, but the guy responded well to the meds. We get the tube in. Respiratory has come down. He's on the respirator, and the trauma team finally shows up. The room is packed, just for this one guy, and we tend to throw things on the ground as we are working, so it's a bit of a mess. The X-ray tech is called again to confirm tube placement and do other bedside X-rays before we take him for a CAT scan. The guy decides to put on a show. He starts to wake up and reach for his tube. We try to get restraints on, but this man has somehow become the Hulk, so equipment is flying as we hold on for dear life and sedate him, but these meds are not working. The guy got 16 milligrams of Ativan, 20 milligrams of Versed, but didn't stop fighting until we gave him more Etomidate. All of this could put down a couple of horses. Everyone is sweating. The room is a mess. Some blood has been spilled from the patient, but the patient is stable. Outside we hear the X-ray tech. Why are they paging me? I just left. He walks in and just shouts. What the fuck? I just left 10 minutes ago. TLDR. X-ray tech leaves after taking an X-ray of a leg, only to come back in 10 minutes to a giant clusterfuck of a patient. My girls were, like, 4 and 6 years old. One summer evening I left them at home with their dad while I ran to the store to pick up a few things. I couldn't have been gone an hour. When I pull into the driveway and get out of the car I can hear both girls screaming and their dad roaring. I sigh and straightened my shoulders and walk into the house braced for whatever disaster is awaiting me. I go through the front door, round the corner, and see my husband lying in the hallway holding his head. His roars have subsided to a painful groaning. I hear scuffling behind the girl's closed bedroom door. I step over my husband's prone form and burst into the bedroom and catch the girls in the process of climbing out their bedroom window. I got everyone settled down and finally got the story out of them. It seems my husband thought it would be hilarious to scare the girls, so he got out the scream mask, put it on, and tiptoed down the hall and stuck his head through the half-open door. Before he could make any scary sound, the 6-year-old glanced up and saw him and immediately leapt to her feet and slammed the door, pinning his head. When he recoiled from that impact he staggered backward, cracking the back of his head on our bedroom door frame, and collapsed to the floor. The girls were planning to escape next door. The moral of the story is, don't mess with defenseless little girls. Sometimes they'll fuck you up. I wasn't technically gone. I turned my head for, literally, or 3 to 5 count. I was at the pool with my daughter. She's 2, doesn't care how to swim. But this is a graded pool, where the depth slowly inclines up to a shore-like edge. She was jumping up and down splashing in the puddles, and I was sitting about 10 feet away watching her, while talking to a friend. I was watching her and talking, when he said something funny, and I turned to give him a look. I looked back, and my daughter, in a matter of a few seconds, had taken a few steps to deeper water, about 1.5-2 feet, and was under the water, silently rolling around. I never cleared 10 feet so fast in my life. I scooped her up and set her on her feet. It was shallow enough to stand. I'm guessing she just lost her footing and couldn't right herself and panicked. No coughing up water, barely a sputter, she was fine. But man, when they say it can happen in seconds they aren't kidding. Whoever they are. I was barely fazed by it too. We continued our day like normal. My friend said, I know you're okay now, but it's gonna hit you later. If you need to talk, call me. He was right. That night I replayed events in my head and kept thinking. I looked away for a second. What the hell happened? I just couldn't get the image of her flailing so silently in the water out of my head. No one else noticed her. What if I hadn't? I cried pretty hard at the idea of losing her to such a tragic accident, and vowed to be much more vigilant at the pool or any other body of water. I also got her a life jacket that she hates wearing. The end. I was client-side APM on a construction site. Basically there to help oversee construction and make sure its impact on the school was minimal. We are moving a laboratory sink to build a new classroom / relocate the old one. There's an escutcheon on the sink pipe that is preventing us from removing it from the cabinetry. I tell our foreman, hey, don't worry about this right this second. Let me talk to our build maintenance engineers about it, knowing they had the tool that could help. I also wanted to get them to turn the line off, because it wasn't as easy as they had said it would be, to remove it. The foreman turns and looks at his left-hand guy, says, okay, we won't do nothing until you return. I step out of the classroom and go maybe 20 feet down the hall to radio engineering when I hear, holy fuck, what did I just say? Assistant started poking at something in the pipe, a ceiling ring, something, and somehow knocked something off in such a way that the entire line opened up and literally started shooting out water at fire hydrant speeds across our very expensive science room. I stood for nearly 10 whole minutes in front of the stream trying to catch as much water as I could in one of those plastic waster paper basket and then dumping it down the bathroom next door. I was basically trying to shield anything built into the room that was used by the science class from a fire hose point. All I can say is fuck that guy, and fuck engineering. The valve to shut the line off was in the classroom below, but took them 10 whole fucking minutes. More damage than when they drilled straight into the vertical water main in the building. This is the first time an Ask Reddit question has actually applied to me, so I'll give it my best shot. Back when I was a senior in high school, I started dating a girl from the town about 15 minutes away, and I thought I was truly in love with this girl. You know how shitty teenage relationships go, and you know that they normally end abruptly. Just like this one point, we had been dating for about 3 months, and I decided to go to a New Year's party with her after some people who were friends with her invited us. Everything's going good, the alcohol is flowing like water, and not a single worry in sight, when a friend of mine who I had told about the party pulls up outside, and I decide to go out and hang out for a minute or two. I was gone for about 7 minutes, and when I come back inside, my ex was nowhere to be seen. I decided to look for her, and it didn't take much searching to find her in one of the guest rooms getting d***ed by 2 random dudes she had just met. I remember it took a second for me to realize what was going on because of the amount of alcohol involved at a typical small town high school party. All I could do was leave because the damage had already been done. I haven't seen her since, and I don't really care to see her anymore. TLDR. Started dating girl in high school, took girl to party, went outside for less than 10 minutes. She decided to let 2 random dudes DP her while I was gone. I was living in the dorms with my roommate, and we both decided to get up really early to work on some homework before going to class. I was making a giant pot of coffee. I had one of those cheap rival coffee makers where you pull out a tray to fill with coffee grounds instead of a lid that flips up. I turned it on to start the coffee and then left to go to the bathroom. I was gone maybe 3 minutes. On my way back to the room, I see my roommate running out of the room shouting, "I'm so sorry. I made a mess." Confused, I ask, "What the crap happened?" I got curious. When I walk inside the room, there are wet coffee grounds and water all over my desk. What had happened? What I had put so many grounds in? It was a 10-cup maker. She was skeptical that the water would get to all the grounds. She thought the water would just shoot through and only the grounds in the middle would get wet, only to find out that the whole tray fills with water before coffee starts coming out. This spilling my coffee grounds and water everywhere. It was still salvageable. Surprisingly, we both had empty 32-ounce Sonic cups from the night before, so after the coffee was done, we poured it through a tea strainer into the cups to catch all the loose grounds that had gotten in, then poured it all back into the pot. Through a rager of approximately 60 kids in high school, and an old friend showed up with some mescaline. A couple time units later, I went for a walk with a friend. I was gone for about half a time unit and came back to people running out of the house, girls screaming, cheap beer sloshing all over the place as the rabble dispersed. Half a time unit or so later, I managed to understand what the fuss was about. Someone fired a gun inside the house. It was my parents' house and I wasn't sober, so I stumbled inside and started shouting something that was probably about who fired a bazooka and why are my hands so big. I heard a door open in the upstairs bathroom and went to investigate. My old friend had shaved half his head and was standing in the doorway looking at me. I don't remember his expression, but I remember that his nose was impossibly long and his cheeks were kind of waving at me. Thankfully he was wearing shoes as the entire bathroom was covered in shattered glass. There was a bullet hole in the wall at about head level, where the mirror used to be. He didn't even say anything. I didn't ask. Dude had had a moment. Anyways, the rents were due back the following afternoon, so we spent the rest of the night trying to figure out how to acquire a mirror and install it while faked up out of our skulls. It turns out that it takes approximately 12 faked up teenagers to hang a mirror. Late to the party, but damn, Do I have the story for this? A few years ago, I was 19 and living with my parents, who went on a week-long vacation. I went down to the city an hour away for class, got a quesadilla on the way. After a few hours, I started feeling really hungry. I didn't have any cash that day and just had some change, so I decided to grab a soda out of the vending machine, figuring if I could get some sugar in me, I would feel better. It didn't help, and pretty soon I was seeing stars. I needed some food and fast, so I got in my car and got on the interstate to head back home. I made it 3 miles up the highway when I realized my fingers were asleep. They felt busy, like I had thick, vibrating gloves on. Another minute later, and the feeling was traveling up my arms. I pulled off the nearest exit and right into a conveniently placed McDonald's, where I could use my card. I got in the drive-thru, placed my order, and had the idea to feel my chest. I couldn't feel my heartbeat. I didn't know if it was because I couldn't feel my hands anymore or what, so I pulled out of the drive-thru into a parking spot, unbuckled my seatbelt, and threw my door open. I clumsily slid my phone out of my pocket from the outside of my jeans with the side of my hand. I managed to dial 911 with my pinky knuckle and balance my phone on my shoulder. 911 emergency. Do you need police, fire, or ambulance? Ambulance. My name is my life is AP. I'm in a red Chevy Monte Carlo at the McDonald's off exit 5, and I can't feel my heartbeat. My limbs aren't moving right. My legs began to feel buzzy and thick and clumsy now as well. But the scariest part was that the left side of my face was stuck in a painfully contorted position. I think I'm having a stroke. The nausea hit a peak, and my legs were frozen. Every muscle from my shoulders to my fingertips was contracting painfully, causing my hands to ball up into fists, my fists to bend inwards, and my arms to cross my chest. Do this for 5 seconds as hard as you can, and you'll see how much it hurts. At this point, I was completely frozen. All I could move were my tongue and my eyes. The pain was sickening, and I was screaming into the phone in agony. I was so afraid. I was trapped in my own body. I thought I was going to die. I wanted to call my mother and tell her I loved her. I wanted to call up my ex and make one last amend point, but then the fire truck came. 3 firefighters came out and rushed over to me, shining a light in my eyes and telling me to breathe slowly. It was hard. They were trying to get my arms to relax, but to no avail. Several minutes later, the ambulance arrived. Paramedics came out and started asking me questions. Am I on drugs? No. Am I sure? Yes. Just please help me. They asked me to swing my legs out of my car. After several minutes of effort, I managed it, but barely. I had a person under each arm and they walked me to the ambulance. I was weak and could barely move and still very scared. Once I'm strapped to the gurney, my delightful new friends ask me if I had a preferred hospital. My answer, predictably, was whichever one was the closest. Once at the hospital, I got fluids, 4 EKGs, 2 giant potassium pills, and some snack bars out of the vending machine. Also a $900 bill and a diagnosis of low potassium and dehydration. With my dying phone, I text everyone in my class, trying to find a ride back to my car 10 miles away. After some time, I get one. Once at my car, I text my mother a photo of my hospital wristbands and the EKG stickers. Guess who immediately calls me? I tell her the whole story, which she doesn't interrupt once, very out of character for her, and once I finish, I'm greeted with a silence of several seconds before she says, "Calm as you please, I leave you alone for 1 day and you almost kill yourself, TLDR. Bananas aren't just for scale, fakers." I used to be a direct care provider at a group home for children who had been removed from their parents' custody. The home was for children aged 0 to 12. A 3-year-old came in who the rest of the staff called Tiny Satan, which wasn't very nice. He had severe behavioral issues. A child psychologist once said it was inevitable that he would become a sociopath, which I also didn't think was very nice. Anyway, longer story short, this little boy developed an affection for me. We'll call him Kevin. Kevin didn't like people telling him what to do, nor did he like not getting his way. So anytime he got put in timeout, or had a toy taken from him, or was denied something, he wouldn't pup point seriously. He refused to pup. He'd hold it in for days. Then he'd soil himself at daycare, and they'd send him home, which was a serious pain in the butt, no pun intended. It somehow became my task to potty retrain him. So I tried to make it a very positive thing, gave him initiatives, starburst candies, etc. Things were going very well for a while, not regular by any means, but certainly better than holding it in for 7 days. One day I came in for my shift at 3 PM and Kevin did not greet me as usual. I saw him sitting in the corner with the look of Satan upon his face. Apparently, he had struck another child with a toy block, the big rectangle one, and had been put in timeout. I waited until his timeout was over and asked him what happened, but he wouldn't talk to me. 4 hours later, just before bedtime, he comes up to me sweet as pie and says he has to go potty. I figured he had to go pretty badly, since he had not gone in a couple of days. He would tell me it hurt, or he didn't have to go. Yes, we did the usual things like apricots and increased water intake, so I jumped up, of course, to take him to the bathroom. He sits himself on the pot and, whatever, when I realize there isn't any toilet paper in the bathroom. I tell him to keep on going while I got some toilet paper. When I tell you the supply closet was literally 3 feet outside the door, I'm not exaggerating. I might have been gone 30 seconds. The toilet paper came in industrial packages, like 10 to a cardboard box, or whatever, and I had to open the box, then rip off the paper wrapping. When I went back into the bathroom, it was like a goddamn horror scene. He had taken his own feces out of the toilet bowl, or maybe just popped into his hand, and smeared it everywhere. It was all over the walls, the toilet seat, the toilet tank, the sink, the undersink cabinet, the floor, the sink handles, above the toilet, the edge of the bathtub, the shower curtain, and all over him. In his hair. Jackson Pollock of Sheet Point. So I ended up hosing him down, literally, while he bawled and tried to bite me. Did I mention he also hated baths? And that's my story of I was only gone 30 seconds. What the hell happened? TLDR. Emotionally disturbed and abused toddler dances love altar with Mr. Hamkey. I'm incredibly late to this thread in Reddit time, but this thread also happens to be incredibly relevant, so what the hell. This actually happened last weekend. Having one last big blowout this past Saturday before classes and the full semester got going. 3 of my good friends and I were all in my room and trying to play a drunken game of FIFA on my PS4. I decided I needed a re-up on my libation, and so I went downstairs and got a new one. This is where things went wonky. Get back upstairs to my friends showing me the HDMI cable was bent. No big deal, right? I'll just go downstairs and snag another one and we can get right back to our drunken activities. Only when I get back I realize that the new HDMI cord isn't working either. Must be the HDMI port on the TV. Nope, still not working. In my inebriated state I didn't want to believe my PS was broken and just wrote it off as I wasn't in the right state of mind for troubleshooting. Wake up the next morning and first thing I do is try and turn it on, but the faker still wasn't working. Now I'm out more than a fair share of cash to get the faker serviced and repaired, all for something I didn't do. The cherry on top is that all 3 of my friends deny that they did it. Either they're lying or we have a mystery PS assassin on our hands. Will I find out who really broke it? Am I destined to carry this financial burden all by myself? Stay tuned next week for the next episode of My Life Sucks. TLDR, my PlayStation got faked in the amount of time it takes to go downstairs and get a drink. I was having a night out in Hong Kong with a friend from Australia, which turned into a night of me trying to prevent him from fighting people and pissing on things, and also fighting things and pissing on people. As things were winding down we ended up at the bottom of LKF and saw a pizza place that was open. We walked in and he ordered. I didn't want anything. There were 2 Indian guys there and we all got to talking. Turns out they were Australian as well, and they got to talking. It quickly turned into my Australian friend telling one of them how much he sucks for living in Sydney and how cool he was for living in Melbourne. It then turned into a contest over who could eat spicier food. They were friendly about it though, and I decided to walk across the street to the 7-Eleven to buy a water as I'd had a rough night watching my friend point. I got back, and it was chaos. One of the Indian guys was on the ground clutching his eye and bawling like a baby. My friend had a bewildered look on his face, but was still managing some bites of his pizza. The wall was covered in hot sauce and those red pepper flake things that come out of a shaker. I asked the other Indian what happened, and he was completely unintelligible. I mean, it's not your friend's fault. Well, I guess it is, but kind of. What happened? What the fuck? The bawling from the guy on the floor got worse, and he eventually started yelling, "I need to get to the fucking hospital." My friend just kept eating. Apparently it was pretty spicy though, because he asked me for some water. Eventually the one guy, still stammering half sentences, grabbed his friend and they left. My friend had no recollection of it the next morning, so I never found out what happened. The rest of the night before and after that incident was an equally large shit show. I was at my grandpa's house a couple years back during spring break, and my grandma and grandpa had told me to watch my brother for 2 minutes while they got the last of the things they needed. They were going to drive us back to my parents' house in a few minutes, and my 3-year-old brother was playing in the front yard. I was watching him, but I decided to leave him just to check up on the pool, which was just built in my grandpa's side/backyard area. When I came back, my brother had climbed on this tiered fountain in the front yard, which was made of some sort of stone and was quite large. As I ran over to grab him off, it collapsed on him. For some reason there was no bolt or anything holding all the pieces together in the middle of the fountain or something, and my brother was a big kid at 3 years old. My brother's toe was nearly severed off, and his head was covered in blood because he had fell back and hit the concrete hard, and he was crying, and I didn't know what to do. The big heavy top piece of the fountain had amazingly missed his head, but he wasn't so lucky with the other pieces of the fountain. My grandma came out just then and was in shock. She called my grandpa over, and they called 911, and I just stood there like an idiot. The fire department came first, which thankfully was very close, and an ambulance soon after. They moved my brother on the table in the kitchen and were asking me what happened. I told them, and I felt horrible. I had turned my back for about 45 seconds and now my brother had to be rushed to the emergency room. While we were waiting for the ambulance, I cried upstairs and couldn't believe what just had happened. Once he was rushed to the hospital, they had to do surgery on him to fix his nearly severed toe and stitch his wounds on his head and over his body. He was in the hospital for a few days, and by some miracle he lived. He's fine now, and, I hope, he is unaffected by this incident. So yeah, that's my "I looked away for 2 minutes and something happened" story. I guess it's also my grandparents' "I looked away for 2 minutes and something happened" story as well. TLDR, my grandparents told me to watch my brother for 2 minutes. I walked away for a short time and a fountain fell on him. He was okay, but I always keep a close on my brother now. I can tell you my dad's story. This must have been around 73. I was 2. We lived in Houston and my older brother was raising a calf for FFA. This was back when there really weren't any hoes, so we basically had a cow in our suburban backyard. It was the night of one of the shows for ag, so dad and my older brother loaded up the cow and hauled it to Pasadena for the show. The show went off just fine, and we were headed home, towing the cow behind the old Dodge crew cab my dad had. We are in line trying to get out of the arena. I'm standing up in the middle of the bench seat between my dad and brother. It was 73 and there was no such thing as child safety laws, so it was cool to do that. There was also no AC in the truck, so we had the windows down. Dad yells "sheet" real loud and hops out and pops the hood and lots of smoke billows up. He yells at my brother to grab the fire extinguisher, so he does, and hops out and hands it to dad. As dad is putting it out, he tells my brother to roll up the windows so I don't get smoked out. My brother does this. Dad puts out the fire, opened the door, and placed the fire extinguisher in the floorboard of the cab, shuts the door, and goes to inspect the damage. Now, a bit of background: my dad was a marine engineer, working for an oil company. He had lots of safety equipment. This fire extinguisher was one of the larger dry powder extinguishers, like you would find in a school, not one of the small ones you see in cars or boats. Well, I see this big red thing, and go to inspect it. I saw what he did, so figuring the only reason he handed me the fire extinguisher was because he needed my help. Mind you, this cylinder was about my size. I couldn't squeeze it, so I grabbed the dash and stood on the lever the goddamn thing and loaded itself. There was faking white powder all over me, the cab and everything else. I started coughing, and my brother heard me, and thinking there was smoke in the cab came and opened the door and busted out laughing. Well, I started laughing too, high-pitched toddle laughs, and dad wondering what was up, peeked around the hood. He couldn't see in because of all the white powder on the windshield, so he walked around and just stood there for a second and just said, well, goddamn point he managed to get the truck running again. It was just a little fuel leak. We had to drive home, windows down and white powder blowing all over the place 3 years later. Occasionally when we turned the vents on, powder would still puff out. Edit. One more about my brother. As we were adults, he smokes pot. Lots of pot. Still does. He got a decent deal on a quarter pound and snatched it up. He was living with me at the time. I knew about it. No big deal. I had a beagle at the time and he and my beagle were the best of friends. I'm at work one day and my phone rings, and it was my brother, and he was just rambling that little motherfucker. I can't believe this shit. I calm him down and ask him what is up. He said I rolled one and went to the bathroom to take a sheet and smoke it. I get back, and that little motherfucker ate my stash. I bust out laughing, cause I see we are headed into some Cheech and Chong bits here. He got pissed at me laughing, and hung up. Point I get home, and my dog is passed the hell out. He moved real slow for about 3 days after that. He was fine, but he apparently developed a watermelon phobia through the experience. He was absolutely terrified of watermelons after that. My brother survived 2 ordeal as well, and loved to tell that story now. A few friends and I were traveling, road trip style, making our way westward. I forget where we were, Idaho? Colorado? I have no idea. 2 of 3 of us run into our motel room to use the bathroom. I was gone maybe 3 to 4 minutes. I run outside to relieve the third person guarding our open vehicle. When I get outside, she's standing there with her jaw open and staring wide-eyed into a field. I ask what was wrong. A faking giraffe just ran by me. She proceeds to tell me she saw a giraffe run by in the parking lot and go into that field behind the motel. We all look, nothing. So naturally we joke about her being punch drunk, having licked some colorful stickers, and other drug related jokes. I mean, come on, a giraffe. We literally grilled her. Was it really a very tall dog, horse, alpaca? Do you know what an alpaca looks like? Haha. She's cursing us out, insisting she saw a $Ash at $Ash at Ash giraffe. We are there for 2 days, maybe 3. No giraffe sightings. We are leaving early the next morning, and I'm sitting in the back of the car enjoying the coffee and early morning sky. Don't I faking see a tall as giraffe hidden behind a rundown building, calmly eating something. It's just standing there, perfectly still, with its lower jaw rolling around like a cow chewing cud. It happened so fast I doubted myself. And I say, oh my god, the giraffe. But we are already on the ramp to the highway and we cannot stop or pull over. By the time we got off and circled all the way back around, it was gone point. And so lives the legend of the giraffe. Never did learn where it came from, what happened to it, etc. And it all happened in a few minutes when we got out of the car to go use the bathroom. I used to work in a garage. One day in the winter, after finishing a brake job, I pulled the car out and did a lap around the block to check the brakes and see that everything was working proper. It takes about a minute and a half. I get back to the shop, park the car out front and head inside. When I open the man door, a huge gust of hot air rushes out. A stack of brand new tires were completely on fire. The boss was unwrapping the garden hose and fumbling to hook it up to the sink. One guy was in the process of dumping the mop bucket onto the fire and another guy was struggling to operate the fire extinguisher. Turns out it was partly my fault. When I was backing out, I ran over an air hose, which happens often and isn't really a big deal as they're heavy duty, and the hose was kind of looped around the trash bin. The trash bin was next to the acetylene torch, which was currently being used by one of the mechanics. So what happened was, as I ran over the hose, it tipped over the bin, which knocked into the guy working with the torch, startling him. so he drops it under the frame machine next to a stack of tires that WR had just received that morning for a customer. The mechanic panicked and tried to reach under the frame machine to grab the torch instead of cutting off the gas tanks, and that was just enough time for tires to set on fire. Point was a crazy as day. I was on a night out with a few friends. I'm the only one that doesn't drink. I went to the bathroom, came back, and one of them was gone. Asked the other two where she went. Oh, she said her ear hurt, so she went to the hospital. Weird, but okay. Point walk to the hospital. Keep ringing her. No answer. Get to the hospital. Nobody's coming under that name or with that problem tonight sheet. Keep ringing her. No answer. Go to the police station to ask them about it. She doesn't become an official missing person until she's been gone for 24 hours. Write her name/description down and we'll let you know if she comes in. Right, not useful. Point go back to campus. Maybe she's there. None of the staff have seen her. Fact. Ring her again. She finally answers. I'm lost, but this road sign says I'm at X. Look it up in the AZ. The only time I used it for the 4 years I was at uni there. Tiny village outside our town. One of the guys insists he's okay to drive to get her, so I go with him. Constantly shout at him to not drive too fast. Finally find this girl huddled under a bush. Get her in the car and take her home. Turns out she decided to walk to the next town over to play on the beach. Reached the river and decided she must have arrived. Turned around and took a wrong turn home, ending up in tiny village. Point uni staff hear about this whole misadventure and call the girl radar for 3 years GLDR. Girl wandered off, leading us on a 4-hour wild goose chase. I've told this story recently. Point played a house show as a favor for a friend. 2 dudes are moshing, like, hard, and one guy takes a really hard fall and is bleeding on his forehead. We stopped the show for a few minutes to get him on the couch inside. He was super drunk and possibly high on something. He had an unnatural amount of energy, but seemed fine overall. Point we play our last song. As the guitars decay off the last note, a girl opens the door and yells, "Guys, Todd's not breathing." Mostly everyone except me and the dude's wife are drunk and freaking the fuck out. I ran inside, CPR certified here, and found him passed out. No discernible pulse or breathing, basically unresponsive. Started CPR, got a weak pulse, and he starts fluttering his eyes. Seemed like a concussion or something, but that didn't explain the other issues. Then, his wife dropped the bomb. He has a heart condition, but I don't really know about it. Fact. Point he keeps fading in and out. I'd had someone call an ambulance. The party cleared out in record time because weed and 1 or 2 drunk 20-year-olds. Ambulance shows up and carts him off. Whatever they did to him, it took about 10 minutes for him to not only be awake and responsive, but to start trying to fight the EMTs off, tell them to fuck off, etc. Point eventually heard from his mom. He's only like 23. The next day, who thanked me for what I did. He had a concussion, cracked rib, and had basically gone too hard for his heart to handle, and it fought back. Point it took 3 minutes for the dude to go from, "Ow, that kinda hurt," to nearly dead. Oh man. I have a good one. I hope gets buried because my friends will definitely know it's me, but I have to tell it. Point after hearing so much about them, I finally get to attend a crazy party at a friend's parents' place. They live out in a middle of nowhere town and occasionally abandon the house for a weekend, so their son and his friends can get rip-roaring wasted and party. The party is going well but nothing too unusual. Drinking, dancing, high hilarity from both. Pretty much everyone is hanging out around the huge island in the kitchen. I duck out to use the bathroom. I finish up and discover, to my dismay, that whoever used the bathroom before me has rendered it incapable of flushing. I try to fix it myself, but the darn thing won't flush. I'm in the bathroom for approximately 5 minutes. I decide fuck it and go to find the host. When I return to the kitchen, my friend looks straight at me. Her eyes widen and she goes, "Oh my god. Did you miss that?" "Miss what?" Everyone is freaking the fuck out. They can't believe I missed that. Apparently in the 5 minutes that I was in the bathroom, it came up that 2 male members of the group would be down to do some sort of semi-sexual act, and my female friend said I'd pay to see that, and immediately the negotiation began. The final terms were this: male 1 would slap male 2 on the face with his limp dick. I said semi-sexual, sorry to disappoint. Female friend would pay $40, which the two would split, $30 for the slappy and $10 for the slapper. With the agreed upon exchange, male 2 knelt, male 1 undid his pants, and everyone was all back to normal by the time I returned. I cannot stress how little time I spent in that bathroom. I know I was a drink or two in, but I gave up on that toilet fixing real quick, and it doesn't take long to empty one's bladder. We still discuss this event from time to time. Male 1 still finds it hilarious that he got paid to slap his friend with his dick. Will probably get buried, but I don't give a shit. Near the end of my 7th grade year, I decided to take a day off for sheets and giggles, since the year was ending, and teachers weren't really doing anything important for classes. It was a pretty relaxing day off. The next morning, the principal called the whole grade in for an assembly where she indiscriminately scolded everybody for their behavior yesterday. Thankfully, there was no serious, zero tolerance punishment or some bullshit like that. I was seriously confused throughout the whole assembly and later asked my friends what the hell had even happened, since the principal didn't specify details. Apparently, a majority of the students had planned out an end of the year food fight. It went through, and all hell broke loose. Food was pelted everywhere. A lot of people participated. Everyone got hit with food, etc. It got so bad, some people ran out of the cafeteria and hid in the gym down the hall. The vice principal couldn't stop it herself, so she had to get the principal and some teachers to help from the second floor. Cafeteria's in the basement, so it took a while to even break up. The kicker was that this cafeteria was brand faking new. The school had gotten it that same year, and it was their pride and joy. Me, being the clueless asshole I was at the time, then asked my friends if they got pelted with food, and, with a reluctant sigh, they grudgingly said yes. For the rest of the day, I was extremely grateful that I took the day off for sheets and giggles a day before. I later heard that another kid was spotted eating his lunch while hiding underneath the table, just casually watching all the chaos unfold. If you're reading this, Jacob, that was faking cool. My buddy came over with his wife and kids on NFL Sunday. The wives went out shopping, leaving us to watch the kids. He had 2 girls around 8 and 10 at the time. I had a daughter that was 10 and a son at 12. We finished a 12-pack by noon. West Coast. The games start at 10 AM. I ran to the store really quick to get another 12, leaving him to watch all 4 kids run around while keeping an eye on the game. I was back no later than 15 minutes. Came home to see my buddy upstairs with a tub of butter trying to get his daughter's head out from being wedged in the stair rail. Picture a square tubing with about 5 spacing between rails. Now picture a girl's greasy head sticking out, face beet red from scream crying and tears dripping to the floor downstairs. My buddy looked fucking helpless. I run up and try prying the rails open so he can squeeze her head back through, and she screams even louder. It ain't working, and we're panicking, because if the wives come home we are basically dead. I have a bright idea: jet down to the garage and come running back up the stairs with a 2-ton jack. I turn that faker sideways and it just fits between the rails above her head. I start cranking that thing, and those bars start spreading. It was a beautiful sight. We yank her head out no problem, clean all the butter and tears up, and it was a distant memory an hour later when the wives showed up. I was 2 at the time. My parents were babysitting a friend's Samoyed for whatever reason. It's been a long day, so they order some Chinese. The dog's an indoor/outdoor dog, so they throw some sticks. While waiting for the driver arrives. They pay, dish the food onto plates in the kitchen, and eat it in the dining room, while being stared at by a Samoyed who probably could have put his head on the table with little effort. They finish, and suddenly there's a knock on the door. Mom goes upstairs to swap her shirt, because she spilled a bit, and Dad went to get the door. When they both came back to the kitchen, Dad tells Mom thanks for putting the leftovers away, dear. Mom replies, I thought you put them away. 30. Panicked seconds later, they find the Samoyed with brown sauce all down his front, on his face, on his feet, on his stomach, and even some on his back. They find the cardboard boxes from the Chinese food, and they spend the next hour or so cleaning the floor and hosing the dog down outside in a kiddie pool. The dog thought it was the best thing ever and tried to play in the pool, knocking my parents on their respectives multiple times until my dad essentially tackles the dog and holds it still. They still laugh about it to this day. I'm 10 and it's my birthday. For my birthday we go to a hotel because they have a pool with a slide. I invite all my friends and they all show up. The birthday party was amazing fun. Every joking around, playing, laughing. A huge hit point. So it comes time to leave and my mom is settling up at the lobby. She's paying for the room and the food. I get her attention and say very clearly, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back, okay, she says, and points me in the direction of the bathrooms. Hurry up, okay. I still have to drop off a lot of your friends. She turns back to the lobby attendant and I turn to go to the bathroom. I'm gone for maybe 3 minutes. I only had to pee and she told me to hurry, so that means washing hands is optional, right? So I get back to the lobby and my friends are all gone. My mom is also gone, so I think she's probably waiting in the van. I leave the hotel and wave goodbye to the attendant. He waves with a smile. Once in the parking lot I can see immediately the van is gone. She left me. I wait in the parking lot for a few minutes. She's probably playing a joke for my friends. What a kidder, I think. 5 minutes go by, then 10, then 20. I know how many minutes because I just got a Casio watch for my birthday and it has a stopwatch on it. After 20 minutes I'm starting to panic. The sun has gone down. I don't know where my mom is. People are starting to arrive and check into the hotel as it's getting late. I go inside and the attendant is surprised to see me. Did you forget something? He thinks we've come back. No. My mom left without me. I'm less scared now and more angry. Can I use your phone? Sure. I call home. No answer. I call my best friend. His mom answers. Oh hi Orsa dog. No, my son isn't home yet. I thought he was with you. I briefly explain the situation and she's shocked. I'll call you back. If I can't find her, you do that. And if I see her I'll let her know where you are. I hang up and call home again. My older brother answers the phone. Is mom there? No. Where are you? She left me at the hotel. He laughs and laughs and laughs. It's not funny. It kinda is. I hang up on him. The attendant looks at me expectantly, as if I have the answer of what I'm supposed to do. Can I get you anything? Do you want a Coke? Oh okay. I sip on my Coke and I see a pair of lights coming straight at the lobby at a high rate of speed. It's my mom. To this day she blames me for this. She insists she didn't forget me. I had hid from her. I've pointed out on many occasions how all of my friends that were in the van told her I wasn't there, but she dismisses this outright. Skip forward a few years and we are watching Home Alone, the first one. Kevin gets left home by his parents and my mom turns to me. See, I'm not the only one. It's a movie, mom. Gone for 3 minutes and abandoned by my mom. Nice one, mom. Shortly after high school I was the odd man out going on a road trip with 2 friends that were dating each other for a short period of time. We weren't quite halfway to our destination when the car started having problems, so the driver made the decision to turn around and go home instead of getting stuck further out of town. We barely made it back into the city a couple hours later when the car stalled. Everyone was grumpy because our trip was cancelled. We decided to stop at a fast food restaurant because everyone was also starving, but this was particularly difficult for me because I was a vegetarian at the time. We get to our table with some chicken, a couple burgers and a shitty fast food salad. The driver excuses himself to go to the bathroom and I figured I'd eat all his chicken while he was gone because I was still starving after that terrible iceberg salad and Italian dressing, and it'd be funny because he'd never suspect the vegetarian. When he returned 5 minutes later, he started yelling at his girlfriend, who pointed to me and said that I did it, which I did. Cue the hilarity. Except he kept getting angrier about it and then got angry at me for trying to protect her when I actually confessed to doing so because there was no way the vegetarian would eaten the chicken as a joke. They broke up the next day and, as far as I know, still don't speak to each other. TLDR. While dude goes to the bathroom I choke down his chicken and ruin his relationship. About 4 or so of us were hanging out watching movies in my friend's tiny apartment when me and one of the girls decided that discreetly humping under the blanket wasn't enough for us. So we told everyone we were gonna go run to 7-Eleven and grab some drinks and snacks and be back. We go down to my tiny 2-door car and do the business in the back seat and then drive off to 7-Eleven to get snacks afterwards. Well, I guess our friends got worried about us because we ran into them on the street on the way back to the apartment. They were probably wondering what was taking us so long, and I had the only car. So we laughed about it, and then everybody crammed in my car, and we drove back to my friend's apt. Well, we show up and there are fire engines everywhere. Turns out in the less than 30 minutes we were gone, the wiring to a lamp short-circuited and caught a pile of clothes on fire, burned down the entire apt, and almost took her neighbor's apt with it also. Well, this neighbor guy was not too pleased with the situation and proceeded to berate and insult and yell at my friend who had just lost her entire apartment and everything in it to no fault of her own. The other guy that was with us didn't take too nicely to that, so later after everything had settled down, he took a sheet on the guy's front doorstep and then smeared it all over the handle. P.S. I know this is hastily and horribly written lol. If it gets enough attention I'll come back and word it out better. So in February of this year, I went to Pennsylvania for winter break for a year. On the car ride there, we stopped by a gas station with free Wi-Fi, so I was able to check my iPad. I didn't have a phone at the time, so that's all I had. I received a Snapchat from my friend asking where I was and if I was with anyone. I let him know I was on my PA, and I had no idea what my other friends were doing. Upon arriving at the motel, it is revealed that one of friends, we'll call him John, robbed one of my other friends, we'll call him Bob, of 1/8 of weed. Not even a couple hours passed since I left New York and shit is already going down back home. I believe the same night or the night after, one of Bob's henchmen retaliated by slashing John's mom's tires. He meant to get John's car. Whoops. He dealt hundreds of dollars in damages over only $45 worth of weed. Then a few days after, John and another friend of mine decided to break into an old abandoned/burned house in our neighborhood. This, as you might be able to tell already, did not end well. They got the cops called on them, got arrested for breaking and entering and burglary. Not only that, but it smelled like pot in John's car, so they were put on probation. Luckily they were both under 18 at the time, so they were let off easy, but of course John had to go ahead and smoke while on probation, fail his drug test, and get his probation period extended. This all happened within 1 week of me not being in New York. While everything was on fire back home, I was chilling with my baby niece and enjoying myself. I don't understand how one could manage to fuck up so badly within a week. My buddy was celebrating his day at a club and a casino. He rented a section out for the night. He's the kind of guy who gets 2 drinks in him and starts to slur his words slightly. Not drunk, but happy. Anyways, we are there for all of 30 minutes and he gets escorted out for public intox. Casino security and police ask him to leave, but he's pleading his case. I tell him let's just leave and ask security to let me go back inside to get everyone else, which I do. 60 seconds later I come out of the club. My buddy is in cuffs crying his eyes out. I ask what the fuck is going on. 10 seconds later another buddy is being dragged into the casino, in cuffs with blood dripping from a wound on his head. I repeat, what the fuck is going on? Cop all amped from running down my friend in the parking lot, gets right in my face, and tells me to shut the fuck up, and to get the fuck out of his casino. I tell him I'm not going anywhere until I know where my friends are being taken, so I can bail them out. He gets nose to nose with me, and repeats to get the fuck out. I repeat that I want to know where they are going. He showed me, slammed me up against the wall, and threw me into an armbar, even though I wasn't resisting, and cuffed me. Apparently they got tired of my friend whining about having to leave, so just arrested him. My other buddy told them they were taking this too faking far as he was leaving. Cops told him to stop and he bolted. Not sure why, and he got tackled by a 60-year-old security guard in the lot, so that was fun. The worst part was spending 8 hours in a cell listening to the same story over and over, except for the 60-year-old guard playing Ray Lewis on my buddy. That was pretty funny to tenths, would not recommend. This will definitely get buried. But I was babysitting my cousins, a 7-year-old girl, Sarah, a 5-year-old boy, Mark, and a 2-year-old boy, Anthony. I was the live-in nanny, so I normally would do numerous chores or my own homework, hobbies, etc. while watching them. Sarah was also quite mature, or so I thought, so she could normally handle controlling the infant. On this particular day, I needed to take a quick shower before I was done babysitting them, so I put on a movie and set up the living room with a blanket fort and some snacks for them to entertain themselves. I hopped in the shower, and before I could even rinse my shampoo out, Sarah was knocking on the door. A bit irritated, I asked her if it was an emergency. Well, giggle I think so. Giggle well what is it? She starts laughing uncontrollably, speaking gibberish, and all I could make out were the words pup and falling TV. I rushed out of the shower, soap suds and all, to find Anthony in front of the TV, covered in sheet, holding the TV up. As soon as he sees me, he bolts and the TV falls. Sarah starts screaming he's been wiping his pup on everything, in too happy of a tone, while I try to catch the sheety toddler still only wrapped in a goddamn towel. I finally get him, and he's smeared from head to toe in sheet. When I questioned the other children as to why they let him wipe sheet on the whole house, and not only touch the TV, but knock it down, they said it was funny. Needless to say, they all ended up cleaning sheet, and reading in corners. TLDR, sheet covered toddler covers the rest of the house in sheet and knocks down a 40 inches TV in about 3 minutes whilst I attempted to shower. My family had spent months leading up to my sister's recent wedding. All kinds of preparations were made. I even had made a post about my unofficial preparations to deal with all the assorted quirks of my sometimes ridiculous family. Anyway, the wedding goes off without a hitch. I stay late till midnight with parents and the staff helping to clean things up. We then return home. We live nearby. My parents immediately go to bed, quite relieved that all was well. I settle down with my laptop to play some games. Well, about an hour later, I get a phone call from my younger brother. Mazen, you have to wake mom and dad up and get them here right now, was the first thing he said. Now, I'm a generally stable sort of fellow, but from his tone I could tell something was seriously wrong. I will admit for a fraction of a second fearing that some horrible, possibly fatal, fate had befallen my sister. However, such was the instilled childhood terror of waking the parents, that my immediate concern for information was actually more geared towards giving them a proper briefing for why their slumber was to be disturbed. So I press for some information and his response is there's no time. Just get them up here now. And then he hangs up. Frustratedly I save the game, pull on something approximating respectable clothes and head over to my parents' place next door. I get there and knock on the door. I get a surprisingly warm what? From the other side, so I open the door and inform them that my brother has demanded their presence. When they ask for more, I explain his reluctance for further information, and while they dress, they call him. He explains that one of the bridesmaids has gone crazy, had way too much booze, and they can't get her to leave. We all head over there, and it turns out she's storming around declaring that any male that's trying to get her to leave is actually trying to rap her. Long story short, she, an underage drinker by about 4 to 7 months I believe, had managed to consume an enviable amount of alcohol. She then decided she did not wish to leave the party, after having carefully informed them all that she needed to leave by a certain time, in order to make her flight back home as she had finals that day. We finally calmed her down, and got her to leave. After that was all settled, I looked over at my mom, whom I was certain had been about to explode over the whole thing. She looked remarkably calm, even amused. I inquired about this, and she replied I've been waiting 6 months for something to go horribly wrong. I couldn't sleep wondering what I was missing. Now that the other shoe dropped and this was it, I'm pretty relieved to be honest. I was once left in charge of babysitting my 2-year-old godson for the weekend. I will preface this by saying I'm the aunt with no kids, just pets, so no I do not have that savvy parental awareness of the mischief children can get into. But I learned. Oh, did I learn? My godson is exceptionally tall for his age and even then, at 2-2.5, was quite adept at getting out of his car seat once the car stopped. So after grocery shopping, I loaded up an armful of groceries and left him, with car doors open, to get out of his seat, while I went inside to unload. I was not gone more than a minute, maybe a minute and a half point, when I returned to the car. He had closed the car doors, locked them, and had turned on the ignition. He danced around in the driver's seat gleefully waving at me. I'm frantically trying to get him to open the car door to no avail. He then proceeds to take off his diaper and smear the contents on the window point. At this point, I'm trying to recall where the spare key to my car is, if there is even a spare key, and how much his mother is going to kill me when she finds out. In a panic, I eventually call the police to come unlock my car door to get him out. When the cop arrived and saw the situation, I was terrified I was going to be arrested for having a kid locked in a car. I think he probably was laughing for a good 5 minutes before he got the car unlocked. When I told his mother about what happened, her response was one of, "Well, glad you got the shitty car and not me." Moral of the story: keep children on a leash at all times. All times. When I was in kindergarten, my life was pleasant and plentiful with many joyous events. However, it was also filled with dark fears of simple school objects. There was the finger-eating pencil sharpener, the handheld child stapler, and above all, the perverted robot on the toilet. There was a restroom in my kindergarten classroom with a newly installed automatic flusher. Now this was when automatic flushing was new to my community in Lander, Wyoming, and my immediate assumption was that the only plausible way this robot could tell when I was done relieving myself was that he was secretly watching me pop the entire time. From the moment I realized this truth, I made it my duty to try and trick this evil machine and save the world from the mechanical fecal creeps. It was another regular day in kindergarten classroom when the gopher began to peak. I had to think of a way to save myself from the menacing robotic toilet, and while my plan was formed to fool the metal pervert, I would have to pup standing upon my 2 feet, mounted on top of the porcelain throne. I entered the tile room and repaired my body. Pants off, unders off, shirt just in case off. There I was, an innocent little kid with a small sheet about to depart from my, as while I was standing straight up and down upon my child-sized kindergarten toilet. This was the last memory I had before I blacked out. The 10 to 15 seconds of memory which I have lost will forever puzzle me, as the outcome of the situation is so drastic it is hard not to gape at the stinking truth. When I came to, what I saw was disgusting yet intriguing at the same time. Although I had defeated the perverted sheet staring machine, I had sheet not only on myself, but on the walls, the floor, and even a small spot on the ceiling. My little brain immediately went straight to panicking, and I figured the only thing I could do was wait until night in the bathroom and leave in the dead of night. This plan had a few flaws that I unfortunately overlooked at first. First and foremost was that almost immediately my teacher noticed that I had remained in the bathroom for a substantial amount of time, and she began to knock. I responded with screams and tears, so naturally my mom was brought to school immediately. Somehow, with her magical mother powers, she coaxed me out of the bathroom, revealing to the class that I had shat almost everywhere except within the sink. I will forever wonder what happened in the blackout period, along with how the hell my 5-year-old self somehow got sheet on the ceiling of a bathroom. Me and my girlfriend were playing Ark co-op, same screen. I know it's horrendous even on a 55-inch TV, and we just got finished building a houseboat and spent all day upgrading it to metal and stocking it for our journey to the north to mine for oil and crystal. Once we were all set, before we started our epic journey, she told me she needed to pee and asked if I could handle traveling north without her, and I jokingly responded, "I'll try my best." So I was steering the houseboat, and I noticed a large Argentinius soaring above us, and he came closer and closer. She was at the top of the houseboat idle, and the large bad swooped her, and we are moving fairly fast in the boat, and she goes flying off the roof into the vast water, and I stop the boat and turn back for her idle body. I was really hoping a megalodon wouldn't come by and eat her. So I get close and grab her controller and get her on the boat frantically. Yes, got her on and in the houseboat. I'm still on her controller. Then suddenly I hear a cry, and the Argentinius swoops and knocks my guy in the water. I turn to my controller to get my guy out of the water, and the bird is pecking at my head. So, For people that play this, you know you gotta hit Y to get on and off a boat, but also if you hold down Y you have options, among them to delete whatever it is you selected. When trying to get on the boat, by tapping Y I must have pressed it too hard flush, and in doing so I deleted the foundation of the houseboat. So, the events happen simultaneously, the houseboats remain sink. Glunk glunk glunk, bathroom door opens, shocked and pissed off girlfriend emerges. I was gone for 1 minute, and I was in the 10th grade, and was fresh out of a relationship for a girl that I was head over heels for. She left me because I was so depressed from my grandfather, who raised me, and my aunt had died 1 week apart from each other. And young me was telling my young self to get back out there. And there was this girl who I had liked a bit. She was in my gym class. So, me and her talked for a few days, maybe 2 weeks, and we talked all the time. Like day and night. What I didn't know was that she had a boyfriend at the time and they were having problems and were on the verge of breaking up. Then one day at like 9 PM we make it official. And I felt good, so I told my best friend that me and him were going to go to Burger King to celebrate. On me of course. This was around 9:05 PM. Then I get a text from the girl saying we have to break up because she's getting back with the guy I had no idea she was with, and my friend gets to my house at maybe 9:10 PM. And I'm just like devastated. And I look at my friend and go, dude, she just broke up with me. And he says, but it's only been like 30 minutes. I tell him it's actually been shorter and that we are gonna go to back anyway because I just wanna eat my 16-year-old self into a Whopper and root beer induced coma. As we leave out the house, I get another text. This one saying that she can be with me because she doesn't want to be with a guy again. It's like 9:25 PM. And something in me tells me to take back the girl who broke up with me in no less than 10 minutes of officially being together. So, I do. Me and my friend get to the outside of back and I get another text. It's maybe 9:40 PM. She's breaking up with me again. Then I start crying while I'm stuffing down this gigantic Whopper and my friend is like, what the fuck? You don't even have to say what happened. I already know. And we sit there in silence for about 10 minutes. Then I get another text. She wants to get back with me. I tell my friend and he's like, tell that bitch to go fuck herself. So, I tell her to go fuck herself. We laugh while I'm still crying for a bit and talk about how girls are dumb. Then he gets a text. She wants to get with him. This was the longest hour of my life. I know this was about X minutes, but so many things happened in X minutes. A few good ones. I was in high school, just got home from practice, and my parents hadn't returned from work yet. I put our 2 dogs, a corgi and a yellow lab, outside and went back inside to change. A few minutes later, I hear the corgi going bonkers in the backyard. I run out to see what was going on and find a tire not only inside the fenced yard, but it had smashed a couple boards on the side between our yard and the neighbors. The lab quite enjoyed running between the 2 yards, and the corgi was telling him to knock it off. Turns out, a car hit the curb on the street behind our house and lost a tire. The tire then went flying over our 6-foot fence, a good 7-8 feet from the curb, and smashed another part of the fence. It was fun explaining to my dad that a tire just appeared in the yard. This one wasn't me, but a friend of ours house sitting for us. My family was going on vacation, so said friend was going to watch my parents' 2 dogs, different ones, Boston Terrier and Chocolate Lab, and my cat for us. She has 2 border collies of her own that stayed with her. The house is decently big, but 4 dogs is a lot for 1 cat to avoid. Her favorite hiding spot is under the living room couch. Friend left the living room for 2 minutes and came running back when she heard the Chocolate Lab wailing some ungodly sounds. Turns out 1 border collie was determined to extract my cat from underneath the couch and ripped apart the bottom reclining bit. Lab tattled on border collie for eating the couch, but the cat was safe. Friend was incredibly embarrassed, but my parents were looking for an excuse to get new couches anyways. My girlfriend left me stacking rocks like a good hippie on the beach for like 2 hours while she had dinner with a parent, and I ended up getting absolutely sheet-faced on absinthe with this 60-year-old woman. I had arranged for her and a friend to pick me up at an intersection nearby where I got wasted. My phone died. I was looking for a payphone. to arrange the exact meetup time, and this lady I had been talking on the beach. Ran into each other. We ran into each other like 4 times while I was searching for a phone, so she invited me up to use hers. I found out I had like an extra hour, and she offered me a drink. She poured me like a full glass of relapse and I drank pretty much the full thing. While we chatted, it wasn't until I was in the elevator that I realized I could barely stand, and I'm surprised I made it across the street to where they were picking me up. I pretty much fell into the car, head spinning like mad, trying like crazy not to barf, while smelling like a fancy chick. Gutter, she quite reasonably said something like, "What the fuck, beggar Toddler, I hardly left you alone for more than an hour and you are sheet-faced. How did you even?" I think I mumbled something like this. "This is not what it looks like. Please take me home," explained TMW. Laughs were had when I explained what happened. TLDR. Went to the beach for a second and got sheet-faced with someone's grandma. Girlfriend was suspicious, but I was clearly too drunk to have cheated on her, so my story checked out. Hope I'm not too late. So I was a swimmer in high school, and one day I was a bit late finishing the last exercise, and so I did warm downs alone in a lane, which takes some time. Well, that day we had worked on how long we could go without breathing, helpful to finish races strong. Well, 2 of my friends always challenge each other to dump sheet, and they never back down from a challenge. Unbeknownst to me, while I was swimming my warm downs, my friend Seamus had been challenged to swim 100 yards without breathing. He had gotten to 75 when we were doing the exercise, so what's an extra lap? Well, what ended up happening was he pushed himself way too hard not to breathe and ended up blacking out about 3/4 of the way back on the last 25. He just kinda floated into the wall, touched it, and immediately sank. Thankfully people had been watching him because it was a challenge. Even the girls had stayed to watch, and the guy who had issued the challenge dove in and fished him out. A lifeguard was there as soon as he got out, and after a little bit of CPR he woke back up and was okay. Funny thing, first thing he said when he came to us, "Did I make it?" Technically he had touched the wall while he floated in, so they told him he had. Apparently people in suits came out of nowhere and were there within 5 minutes of the incident, which is insane because we went to that YMCA 4 years for practice and this was the only time we ever saw anyone in a suit. They solved liability and stuff. While they were making sure he was okay, they kicked everybody out. The girls were crying. It was dramatic. Meanwhile my lazy ass is still just in the pool swimming laps. I get out of the pool to a bunch of people in suits, my friend flat on the ground with a lifeguard over him, and everybody gone. Definitely my biggest "what the fuck happened here" moment. Kind of epilogue to the story is years later there was a story on the news about a Dartmouth kid who died trying to swim a 100 without breathing. Apparently he didn't get out of the water immediately and it turned out bad. Horrible tragedy, but my old swim team talked about it and decided Seamus was evidently more badass than that guy. He touched the wall and didn't even die. In the late 80s I worked at a pizza place and was good friends with most of the staff. I was a bit older than most of them, so I got to go to a lot of 21st birthday bar hopping parties and would often be the designated driver. That wasn't the case in this story, just giving some setup. One night we were closing up and some of the people I would usually hang out with told me that some friends of theirs I didn't know very well, a couple I'd met once or twice, were currently out getting free drinks for her 21st birthday. It was already late, so they were heading back to their place and we were all going to go join in the house party. 3 people hop in my car and the rest get in the other driver's car and off we go. We get there and just a few minutes later the couple get home, both pretty hammered. Perfect timing. I get introduced, exchange a few comments, then excuse myself to go take a piss. Less than 2 minutes later I come back to the living room. There is a big puddle of blood with a trail going out the door, and everybody is gone. I go out the front door, and one of my coworkers is waiting for me. No big surprise, she tells me everybody has gone to the hospital. The birthday girl had fallen backwards and onto a 4 feet long fluorescent black light that was leaning against the wall and cut open her forearm. So the 2 of us head to the hospital and join everyone else who is waiting in the lobby. Turns out I knew one of the attendants, so I got a few details from him. B-Day girl had a perfectly straight, deep cut from her wrist to her elbow. So perfect that they thought the boyfriend may have done it while under the influence of some heavy drugs. That, combined with his drunk behavior, resulted in him being tackled and restrained. Everybody vouched for him and explained what really happened, so they didn't call the cops, but they did keep him strapped down for quite a while. I saw the girl a few weeks later, and she had an impressive line of staples down her arm, about 30 Ike. One time as a teenager, my friends and I all thought it would be a cool idea to pass around a can of aerosol keyboard cleaner and huff air from it. Inhaling the air gave us a mild buzz and temporarily made our voices really deep and cartoonish. It was neat. Not something we took very seriously, mind you, but something to entertain us for a couple of minutes. So, one by one, we each have our turn and take rips from this can, saying silly shit in our deep voices. Just faking around, something to do. Suddenly everyone is just looking at me all weird for some reason. Like my dick was out or something. I'm just like, ick now, what the fuck, guys? What's your problem? They proceed to tell me a story about how I just had a seizure and started contorting into the shape of a pretzel and freaked everybody out until one of my friends immediately next to me managed to snap me out of it by karate chopping me in the back of the neck a bunch of times. I'm so flabbergasted by the ridiculousness of this story I don't even want to believe it, as I totally hadn't experienced any time lapse or anything, but I can tell when my friends are bullshitting. Not to mention that as they were talking, I took mental inventory of the state of my body and realized my muscles were unexplainably exhausted. Not even kidding, though, there was no time lapse at all. All I knew was everyone just started looking at me weird for some reason. I guess this doesn't really fit the formula of the op, but whatever. I was at a bar with some friends and some girls that were with another group of dudes kept looking over at us. Naturally tensions started rising between the groups, but things came to a head when one of Fizz intentionally bumped into one of ours while ordering a drink at the bar, spilling some of his beer. This caused somewhat of a fracas, but it was mostly pushing and shoving, with some expletives being thrown for good measure. Eventually cooler heads prevailed, and that was that. A few minutes later I go to use the restroom and emerge to a full-scale brawl. I'm talking a Donnabrook of the highest order. Everyone was fighting everyone. Our group was fighting Thiz, part of Thiz was fighting another group, girlfriends were fighting wives, bouncers were subduing other patrons, and the bartenders were jumping over the bar to try to quell the situation before getting sucked into the fight themselves. I ended up barreling into a guy that was cornering my friend, and besides getting a few good shots into each other we ended up kind of wrestling for a while. I distinctly remember the sounds of glass being broken over and over in the background. During that time a section of the fight had somehow broke through two sets of doors and spilled out onto the street into live traffic. When the cops were finally called, my friends and I booked it out there, thankfully with little more than a few cuts and bruises to our person. I eventually found out that the fight started when a guy started reprimanding his girl a little too vigorously and another guy came to her defense. I was fostering a dog from an animal rescue once. Figured it would just be a couple days until they'd find her a family, so I had no problem with it. Better than letting her get killed at the pound, that's for sure. So I bring the dog home and immediately she acts like I'm her ultimate savior of life. She's the most scared little dog I've ever seen, and she has the worst separation anxiety imaginable. If I'm out of her line of sight, the world might as well have been ending in her eyes. So one day I'm at home, and, like most of you probably have at some point, I need to take a dump. I go into the bathroom, and what do? I close the door, because I'm a reasonable human being. I'm in there for no longer than a minute and a half. When I exited the bathroom, I found that a good 7 foot by 7 foot section of carpet in my living room completely peeled up off the floor. The weird oddly colored insulation layer and everything. She did it in an effort to try to get into the bathroom with me, and she did it effortless. Literally, 90 seconds flat. I should have gotten her a job at a carpet company or something. It was a nightmare figuring out how to explain it to my landlord, because not only was I renting the place, but there was a pretty strict no dogs rule. I was so angry at her, and I couldn't believe she'd done it. I'd only been fostering her for less than 2 days at that point. Ironically, I ended up adopting her. 3 years later, I still have her, and she's the best faking dog I could ever ask for, and I love her more than I ever thought I could love anything. Oh yeah, and she threw up in the kitchen too. I was visiting my wife's family in Michigan. We live in rural South Dakota. Anyways, the toilet was broken, so I went out into the backyard to find a quiet spot to piss. What I did not realize is that my 1-year-old son followed me out there. Most of the children were outside playing already anyways, but these were the 10 and 11-year-old kids. I went back inside to help with supper. So in this span of time from going outside to pee and looking around to realize my 1-year-old wasn't being loud, maybe 10 minuets passed. I immediately went into panic mode. I ran outside and started yelling his name. Nothing. Told the kids, told the wife, and we were all frantic. Then this dude comes out of the woods asking if we are missing a baby, and I tell him that we are. He told me that my kid decided to play Frogger across the highway on the other side of the woods. So I sprint as fast as I can to the roadway, and there is my son with the local PD. Lucky for me, they happened to be at a nearby residence investigating a burglary when my son ran into the roadway and snatched him up. The only reason they said they noticed him was because a lady slammed her brakes and car horn to avoid hitting him. They gave my son back and chewed my ass. I never felt like a worse father at that exact moment. I hugged my boy tight and thanked God for saving me from my own stupidity. Normally I'm a super dad, but that day I faked up. I brought him back to the house and had an emotional breakdown because the prospect of a future without that sweet little boy in it was far too much to bear. It is really easy to let your guard down when you're used to small towns. Don't let yourself make a mistake like this. Late to the game, but here it goes. My husband and I own a martial arts school, and we offer free trials to people before they commit to taking a class. 99.9% of the time it's normal people. 0.1% of the time you get someone who just wants to test their mettle. I should mention that, although we teach one specific type of martial art, the hubby also has quite a bit of experience in wrestling and grappling, which is very far from what we do, so no one would really know unless you asked him what he did in HS. Anyway, guy comes in, maybe 24 to 27, wants to try a class, seems really normal. I'm taking class that day and working with someone. Me and my partner are practicing next to the new guy, and another more seasoned member are working together. The new guy was trying to do some leg holds on his partner, who doesn't retaliate, but wasn't sure how he should respond to this, which I see out of the corner of my eye, which is not part of the technique we were practicing, and hubby came by to correct him and let him know that this is practice, in that we are allowing our partners to work on the movements and get comfortable with how their human bodies, joints and stuff work. Often during corrections, the teacher would show with the person they are trying to correct. Anyway, I stopped paying attention, continued chatting, couldn't have been more than 5 seconds. Suddenly I realize it's dead silent and just my voice talking with my partner, who stopped to look. I turn around, and hubby had the guy in a chokehold from behind. Guy's struggling like mad. Hubby is just relaxing into the hold and extending his body to stretch him out so his feet can't touch the floor for leverage. The name of this particular move escapes me, but it's not part of our curriculum, but part of grappling. Immediately, I was like, what the fuck are you doing? This seemed to snap everyone out of it, and my husband lets him go. Then he, with way too much cheerfulness, explained that this is why you don't want to try grabbing the legs when your head is bent over and your partner can put their arm around your neck. Guy is pretty subdued the rest of the class, but never comes back. I was pissed though, and reamed my husband a new one after class. As a teacher, he could have and should have explained it without doing the most extreme version of show and tell. What if the dude had a medical condition and you caused him to blow an aneurysm or something? We have a waiver form and insurance, but you never know, and we lost a potential customer. Belligerent dude at a frat party got kicked out for coming on to some girls who weren't into flirting with a blacked out bro. I, at one point, had to put myself in between him and a friend of mine who were about to throw each other off the porch stairs. He walked off by himself, slurring his obscenities and knocking over the neighbor's trash can. I was starting to feel the munches/drunches with my buddy, and we decided to go get some Jack in the Box. Damn good deli sandwiches when you're drunk. We get back, and there's a fire truck and an ambulance outside of the frat. What the hell happened? We asked ourselves. One of our friends had a broken, bleeding nose, a friend was missing, broken nose friend was talking to the EMTs, while his girlfriend was freaking out. Everyone in the party was at ice talking in little groups. The friend who was going to fight Mr. Belligerent runs to our car and starts explaining the situation. Apparently, the neighbors were pissed that their trash can got knocked over and came to our party to confront us. Only he didn't want to talk first. He comes stomping towards the mentioned missing friend and donkey punches him so hard he passes out on the concrete sidewalk. Bleeding nose friend tries to stop the pissed off neighbor and gets his nose broken. Some girl calls 911 and at this point the pissed off neighbor freaks out and basically kidnaps the missing friend to their house. Hence why I'm calling him missing friend. When the EMTs and firemen show up, the neighbors refuse to give up missing friend, who's passed out with a bleeding head in the back of their kitchen. They manage to get missing friend out and into the ambulance. We came right after all this shit went down and were honestly kind of bummed we missed such an epic experience. The next morning I realized that I left my backpack at the frat. So I went back to go get it and see both bleeding nose friend with a cast around his nose and missing friend with a bandage around his head walking up at the same time as me. I asked them, again, what the hell happened? Just in case the drugs and alcohol impaired the situation. Nope, it went down exactly like that. Edit. Oh, bonus story with the what the hell happened? Line switched. A friend, my brother, and I were smoking some weed on a couch, facing a flight of stairs, at another party with basically the same group of people when all of a sudden another friend comes rolling down the stairs like a tumbleweed right in front of us and smashes her head on the wall. Instant KO. We were so into our conversation that the whole thing threw us off guard and just stared at her unconscious body. Sorry, friend. Her boyfriend comes running and asks what the hell happened. I mutter up and just point at her. He yells OHGOD and runs to help her up. He again asks the question, and she goes into this whole story about how they were doing blow upstairs, and she had a great epiphany that she needed to go downstairs, but forgot why. After she almost concussed herself. They ended up going back upstairs and probably banked. In 2013 I had a party at my house for my birthday. I invited a bunch of my Marine friends and my girlfriend brought a bunch of her friends who were mostly dudes anyway. It's the beginning of the party. Everything had been set out and fire set, and I realized I needed more ice. So I told my girlfriend to watch my dog and she's in charge. The gas station was seriously a block away and no one was in line, so 2 bags of ice took like 6 minutes. I came back and she has huge gash in her ankle that desperately requires medical attention. There's a Marine completely knocked out on the ground on my brick patio, and my cake and birthday liquor/bar/cake table is upside down, liquor, beer and cake mixed, and my dog happily lapping it all up. Oh, and someone managed to lose my happy birthday balloons that were tied to my throne birthday chair. It was like that episode of Community. I showed up to an actual absolute disaster. Now the story as I've been told it. The girlfriend had a leash and was standing up. One of the Marines had watched me kick off the downspout pipe and climb up to my kitchen patio/breakfast nook and tried to do it. He screamed and jumped and caught the side of it. My dog jumped up and grabbed his pant leg, pulling him down. When the Great Dane jumped up, he stepped on the girlfriend's ankle, who has Ehlers-Danlos cat forth, ripping her very weak skin and ankle bits wide open. She screamed and fell, pushing one of her bigger friends into the birthday table. No one would tell me how the balloons went away. When I was in college, my dorm floor planned a party retreat at these cabins in Priest Lake in Idaho late one fall. We did this to specifically invite the cute girls on another floor. We thought, romance, right? It took about 4 hours to get all 20 of us carpooled up there. Booze, groceries, all that. My car was the first to get to the caretaker's cabin to pick up the keys. Man, that old dude just couldn't believe what he was seeing. All these dopey punk college kids. But nobody else was up there because it was really cold and the lake was partially frozen, and he really wanted to rent these places out. We got to cabins for super cheap. He said he had already gone up there and opened up the windows to air the place out. Great, we said. Another group of us drove by, tearing up the gravel road right to the cabins ahead of us. We arrived to one of the cabins a few minutes later. Standing outside the front door of the cabin was my roommate and a couple of the girls kinda peering in through the open door with weird looks on their faces. We got out of my car and they shushed us and pointed in through the open door. I peeked around the door jamb and standing there, casually, in the middle of main living room of the cabin was large white-tailed deer. I thought it was stuffed until its tail began swishing nervously. It was pretty big. 5 points, at least 150, 200 lbs. I deer hunted as a kid. This was a fine healthy specimen. I put down the groceries right on the table and it was just standing in there staring at me. My roommate said, "I saw that most Abus was sitting in the kitchen." This alarmed me. It must have gotten, and when the caretaker left the sliding glass door on the back side of the cabin open. Sure enough, I waked around back and it was open. The screen had been partially mashed in and the deer was standing on it. Out the back was the beautiful lake with ice just starting to form. "What do we do?" one of the girls asked. "I dunno. Shoot it?" my roommate said. "No." The girls said. Point. I slowly stepped into the cabin. "Shoo." "Go on, shoo," I said to the deer. It snorted loudly and tapped a forehoof but didn't budge. "Yeah. No, we can just wait it out. I'll walk back to the check-in cabin and go get the guy. He must have to deal with this all the time." "Good plan," everybody said. But right as I was walking up the gravel road, another packed car of whooping kids in our group comes rolling past me, axe/TC blaring out the windows. I yelled to them, but they kept going. So I started jogging to the caretaker's cabin. Took me about 5 minutes. My friend Pete was driving, and he was high as fuck. The caretaker was highly amused. He said he wanted to go back with me to see for himself. "It'll wander out of there in a couple minutes," he said. Point. So we walk back to the cabin, and as we get there we see all these college kids running around screaming, diving in bushes, hiding around the corner of the cabin. "Holy shit," my roommate was yelling as he ran out of the cabin. "What did you do?" I yelled as I looked past him into the cabin. The inside was in shambles. I mean, chairs upside down, feathers from pillows floating in the air, soda shooting out of liter bottles on the floor, glasses smashed, and standing there was the deer with curtains aging from its antlers covering its eyes. It would spin and snort heavily and then kick and spin sheet everywhere. Most Abus smashed. Pete tried to chase it out by banging a pot with a spoon. I tried to tell him, but no, he said he was an animal expert. It went insane and tried to kill him. It was like a bell going off in a boxing match. It just ignited a frenzy, said my roommate. Point. The caretaker just stood there, mouth agape, as pictures swung from corners and fell, smashing to the floor. Soda spraying. It was a scene. "Where's Pete?" I asked. Point. My roommate pointed. There was Pete precariously clinging to a tiny island of ice that was floating away in the lake, and by then the deer had run out and was already swimming to the shore on the other side of the inlet. "Fuck balls," Pete yelled. Years ago in my college days, I dropped acid with 3 friends and put some cartoons on my computer for our viewing pleasure. About an hour later, we still weren't tripping. Determined to get faked up, one of these friends and I headed into town to pick up some cough suppressant. Point. I ate a bunch of it in the parking lot, and then on the ride back to campus the acid kicked in. I puked up the cough suppressant as soon as I opened the door in the lot outside our dormitory, and I could tell from looking at my friend that her acid had also kicked in. We go back up to my room to find quite the scene, considering we had only been gone for about 30 minutes. My other tripping friends had invited 6 other tripping people into our tiniest dorm room. They had hot glued a sheet ton of ball pit balls to our ceiling and then decided to mess around on my computer. One of them had knocked an open soda can into my desk drawer, dissolving a month's worth of medication I had stored in there. Another had burst open a pound bag of sugar I kept to sweeten my grapefruits and was making patterns in it on the floor. This was all too much to deal with, so I just sat on the floor and watched cartoons until I came down. I was able to replace my meds the next day, and my roommate helped me clean. We kept the balls on the ceiling, though. Point. TLDR, tripping kids made a mess in my dorm room. I have severe Crohn's disease, and I was scheduled for a colonoscopy. I've had many, but this time was at a new hospital. The anesthetist said he was going to give me ketamine. I woke up in the waiting room, feeling like a zombie, to my girlfriend and nurse looking at me weird, because I was swearing, but in a good mood. Normally with colonoscopies, I rarely remember anything more than them putting me to sleep, but this time I had an experience that blew my mind. I didn't realize what K-holding was until a Redditor responded to one of my posts where I had explained my experience. The experience was definitely the most powerful dream I've ever experienced. I was in this grey world, on a conveyor belt, being folded into different dimensions. This world was silent, except for a constant noise which sounding like when your ears are ringing. While on this conveyor belt, I swear I had 100% clarity. I literally felt like I was living in my mind, but I couldn't speak or move. I was repeatedly looped into dimensions for what felt like 2 to 3 minutes, then it was on to the next one. I absolutely thought I was there for 6 hours. Even though my colonoscopy took 30 minutes, the experience spooked me for about a week, until I could break it down, and now I look forward to my colonoscopies. Definitely a bizarre and powerful feeling. Nurse here. Once had a young patient who overdosed and was reversed. He was restrained because when he was really confused, when he came back, he was super combative, tried pulling out his catheter, fourth, etc. So we restrained him for his safety, and as I was his nurse a few days later, and I went to do my assessment. By this time, he's no longer combative, but he's just super confused. Still trying to pull things out. Talking about meeting up with some friends to get high, but actually super pleasant too. I check his restraints, make sure his bed alarm is on, all his side rails are up, etc. So I tell him I'll be back with some water and his pills. He says okay. Not 2 minutes later, one of the respiratory therapists finds me and says I need to go to his room quick. I was making my way down the hall. I walk in, and he has wiggled out of the wrist restraints. He disconnected the tubing from his fourth and blood is steadily dripping out. He pulled his fourth pump off the pole and took the channel piece off of the brain piece. He is cradling both parts like a baby. He also sheet himself and apparently went digging around in it before he ripped the fourth pump off the pole. The bed and the machine is covered in it. Then he started crying because he thought I was mad. I was just glad he hadn't tried to pull out his catheter. So this one is about 6 years ago on Halloween, just a couple of months after I moved to Southern California for grad school. I didn't really have any friends in town yet, but a girl I knew from some college friends was living about an hour away, and she came to visit. I also decided that this would be a good time to finally get to know the guys living in the apartment next door, so I invited them to come have a few drinks with us. As it turned out, they had plans to go to a party and invited us to come along. At this point, things are going great. We are having a few drinks and getting to know each other while we get ready to leave. Then I go upstairs to put my costume on. When I come back down, about 5 to 10 minutes later, my friend that had driven into town to hang out is faking wasted. I mean, she's slurring her speech, falling on the floor drunk. I ended up having to stay at my place taking care of her all night as she puked and pissed on herself while my neighbors went to the party without us. Obviously I have no regrets, because that's what you do for a friend in need, and I've been that guy before, but it still kinda sucked. And to this day, I have no idea how or why she got so incredibly hammered in such a short stretch of time. She must have just poured a tall glass of straight vodka and slammed it while I was upstairs changing. Seriously, I was gone for maybe 10 minutes. Returned from work to get some groceries on breakfast. It was 10 PM. I was gone few minutes. Returned back and seeing 3 unmarked vans on my parking lot, with one of them armored. I say strange, but whatever, I live in rough place. Suddenly when I open main doors I hear loud bangs and shouting. Turns out 3 full gear SWAT teams were raiding flat below me for drug distribution and human trafficking. I tell you, listening flashbang going off at 10 PM, it's not great experience. In matter of minutes, they breach the door, destroy basically everything in that flat, and the one who come from jump out of balcony. Second stairs, and get shot in the leg by sniper. Few months later at 2 a.m. my sister wake me up with shout do something. My husband fell upstairs and there is blood everywhere. Turns out he completely pissed himself, got drunk for nap, and fell off the stairs on concrete floor. Fractured skull, large chunk of it missing and blood everywhere. I remember something from sport firefighters, 15 years before this, so check his pupils, and they didn't react on movement or light. Okay, he lost consciousness. Now check pulse. Not bad, but pretty low. Breathing. Tell finally sister to call 911 and get me some rag and mirror. She completely freak out, throw 2 phones against a wall and run away, so I was left to do this all alone. In boxes at 2 a.m. 3 hours before waking up to work. So he was breathing, but heavily and lost pulse. Proceed CPR until paramedics arrive. Suddenly he woke up and proceed to attacking them while they tried to bandage his wound. Well, he was completely out of control, so they used narcotics to put him in sleep, then strapped a chair and anti-spitting mask on his mouth. I went back to flat, open a beer and proceed to boot up Pornhub. Sister arrived 30 minutes later, completely drunk and vomit, and she eat all over bathroom. Point. Such a lovely night. I was babysitting for this family that I had babysat for years and years, and also went to church with. They had 3 children about the ages of 3, 5, and 7. Somewhere around there at least. The 7-year-old was a boy and all he wanted to do was sit and play his PlayStation, and I usually let him do so. The 5 and 3-year-old mostly played together, all of them being generally well-behaved children. I rarely had to step in and scold them for anything. Anyway, this one day, it was a normal quiet day. 7-year-old playing PlayStation like normal. The 5-year-old asked me to bring out the dry erase markers to use on the board they had. So I got the box down, and I told her to not take the caps off of all of them, like she liked to do, to use one at a time. She said okay, and was playing like that for a while. Shoot forward about 10 minutes and I get a phone call from my husband, then fiance. He was freaking out about this mole he found. Anyway, I stepped out of the room quick to calm him down. Literally 30 seconds later I walk back into the room and the 7-year-old is still playing peacefully. The 5-year-old however had taken all of the caps off of the markers and proclaimed proudly, look, I have cap fingers, and the 3-year-old has as many of the markers as she can in her hands and is drawing on the wall. I couldn't even get mad because I should have known better than to leave the room. I just explained why we don't do that to the 5-year-old. Then went and grabbed the cleaner and scrubbed the walls. Thank goodness all the marker came off, and the parents have no clue this even happened. So for some reason my friend was being an idiot when we were kids. My parents were supposed to watch her, and for some reason she got it in her head to go over when she saw her grandmother stopped at the stop sign. I went to get my flip-flops on. It was only a few minutes. And then I saw her getting into her granny's car and driving away. My dad was napping, and for some reason thought this meant I was babysitting another 11-year-old. I got in so much trouble for something she did it wasn't even funny. I was banned from the computer, from the TV. He even tried to take my books away, and said all I'd be doing for the week was practicing my guitar non-stop till my hands bled. And he was gonna do it. He sent me out on the hottest day of the year, to do it outside too. Thank God her mom showed up when she did and said that girl would be in a heap of trouble and to tell my mom she could do what she had to her and apologize to me for what my dad just said in front of her. I got off the hook, thank God, for most of it, but for some dumb reason I was still banned from the computer because my mom decided my friend was not allowed to use ours for a week, so that meant I couldn't use it either according to dad. Mom said that's not how punishment works and to stop using me for a faking scapegoat. I was only gone for 2 minutes, and I had my whole faking day ruined, and lost pretty much all faith in that I could tell my dad anything. Point. My friend was this level of ignorant about safety till she was 17. Unfortunately, it was her upbringing. I will not blame her. I blame my dad for all the times I got in trouble for stuff she did. It's the same levels of stupidity of hitting your own kid for shit another kid did. When I was 16, my dad and I were working on my car and I needed to run and pick up a small car part down the street at the auto parts store. I was gone less than 25 minutes. As I'm driving back I pass an ambulance pulled over around the corner from my house. As I turn the corner to the house I see my parents wrapping a guy in a shop blanket and blood everywhere. I guess the guy had seen someone breaking into his car and came out to confront the guy breaking in and got stabbed several times in the process. I ran down to the ambulance to tell them about the guy that was bleeding everywhere, and they tell me they aren't coming over until the police arrive to clear the scene. So we had to just watch the guy bleed out in eye shot of the ambulance. It was shitty. Eventually the police showed up at the scene and the ambulance came and trucked him away. After they take the guy away there were big clumps of blood cooking to the sidewalk and a bunch of kids and cops walking around. My mom told me to get a hose and spray the street clean. So as I'm spraying the street down I get tackled by a cop who proceeds to shout at me for ruining his crime scene. My mom comes out of nowhere and starts berating the officer about how his crime scene is up the street and one of the kids is going to get an infectious disease walking around barefoot etc. Another older officer breaks up their squabble and basically tells the younger cop that my mom is right and for me to keep washing the street. That's when I learned my mom was a badass and that hot blood smells terrible in large doses. Sorry for my terrible grammar. Was performing community service at a Catholic church in a nearby town. I was basically Clark Griswold. I strung up almost 30,000 Christmas lights on their main building and campus anyway. On the last day of duty, I had just finished lunch. I got a call from the supervisor to step outside for a moment. We were eating in the main rental hall at the church, a detached building for wedding receptions and the like. But we'd smoke cigarettes in there constantly while on lunch, soup included. I stepped out, left my cigarette wedged on a drink carrier, the brown cardboard type. I was asked to go check on the other guy working the grounds. Was gone for maybe a minute. Came back, the hall is on fire. The supervisor is pushing a big long table out of the church that's burning, while his right hand man is carrying a garbage can out that's on fire. Smoke pouring out of the two front windows. I got that want to kill myself type of feeling, because I knew instantly what had happened. And so did everyone else. This was a rather shitty period of my life, and I was a fairly unreliable, smart talking little shit, so my soup didn't really like me to begin with. I ran over to try and help, and he just screams, "Get the fuck out of here. Just get the fuck out of here." I got in my truck and drove away. I didn't even call the fire department. I was in the most bizarre version of one of those panicky stupors you get where rational thinking just turns off. Drove away. Never heard about it or from them again. I assumed they got it contained relatively quickly, or the good lord saved one of his hangouts by miracle. But I'd gotten my hours in and had my paper signed before this cluster took place, so at the end of the day I got off perhaps a little too easily on this one. I was on my way into Algonquin Provincial Park for a 5-day canoe trip with some friends back about this time in 2005. We were on our way in, about to lose radio signal, and listening to the CBC News report of the hurricane over the Gulf of Mexico, approaching Louisiana. 5 days later we emerge from the backwoods, tired, dirty and hungry. We forgot all about the news report and turn on the radio, only to hear the report of flooding, destruction, rioting and looting, and police not showing up to work in New Orleans. We think, well, that's terrible. What happened? We are still far from society at this point as we were in the northwest corner of the park, and literally the first gas station we pass in the car is a flaming wreckage. The four of us are at a loss for words. We are at this point assuming it's the end of days. Ragnarok is upon us, and we are just glad we had a good trip prior to the end of it all. An hour or so later, we arrive in Huntsville, on the next town, expecting at this point zombies, at best, and life is totally normal. We are now tired, dirty, hungry and thoroughly confused. We start asking around, and everyone is sad about New Orleans, and knows nothing about the apparently totally unrelated gas station explosion. It was the oddest experience, and roller coaster ride of expectations. But in the end it was not as bad as we thought it was going to be. Went to hang out with some friends, and go to a club. One friend's boyfriend bought us 2 40s of vodka and we were pre-drinking on the roof of a shopping center. Everything was going pretty great up until I decided I wanted to get stoned, because why the fuck not? It was a Saturday. so I called my buddy to come down and sell me a few joints worth of pot. When he got there I left to go make my purchase. I shouldn't have done that. In the 10 minutes it took to buy and roll the pot, somehow everything went straight to shit. I came back to one girl's boyfriend, only other guy with us, freaking out yelling my name looking for me. Turns out his girlfriend and her sister got drunk off there as while I was gone. I don't remember how much vodka was left when I left for pot, but I know there was none when I got back. Apparently, this was too much for me to handle, so I told her boyfriend to shut up, and I smoked my pot while I thought about what to do. His girlfriend was completely out cold. I dropped her while carrying her into the shopping center once or twice, and she just kept on with her blackout. Her sister was helped in by the others because she could still somewhat walk. How? I have no fucking clue. Anyways, long story short, they both soiled themselves right after getting into the shopping center, and it was at that point we decided to call 911, which was a good idea seeing as they had a good old case of alcohol poisoning. Who knew? I decided to have a cocktail party where everyone brings a different bottle of liquor and we all just mix our own drinks. Younger, underage, brother hits it a bit too hard and is plastered by the time mum and dad get back home. Tries to switch to sober mode, but when they were talking to him, it was clear he was wasted because the amount of concentration he required meant there was a time delay of about 5 seconds between each word. They dragged him inside and put him to bed before going to sleep themselves. Less than a minute later there is an almighty bang and they turn on the light to discover the floor covered in smashed glass, vomit, and my brother apparently, as soon as they left him, the contents of his stomach wanted out and covered the bed and the curtains. He quickly jumped out of bed to run to the bathroom, but being blind drunk in pitch darkness he immediately lost his orientation and grabbed the first thing he could, which happened to be his 68cm court TV. The glass TV cabinet shelves shattered, and the TV ended up upside down on the floor, as did my brother, who finished throwing up over all of the clothes and stuff on the floor. Dad had to spend the rest of the night hosing the mattress off and helping little bro finish purging the contents of his stomach on the back steps. FWIW, the TV still worked, and since it refuses to break it is unfortunately still in use in the family room, but the sound is crap. I work at an adult store. This dude waited for my coworker to leave, but I thought he left and changed his mind to come back. You know, sometimes people are nervous about buying such toys, and because I'm a chick, I've heard men come back after seeing that I'm nice. Nah, he was checking to see if my male coworker was gone. "You're back, yeah," he said. "I'm just not sure if I want to spend the money on this toy." Buy it, I said. "But if you're really unsure, we are having a Black Friday sale coming up. Everything will be 20% off." He went to get the toy. It was $100 plus per Dream Master Rebata. I think it was a fact. Me silly. "How much would it be with a discount?" he asked. I took the toy up to the counter and scanned it with the 20% off. I handed it back to him. He was looking it over. "Is this a good one?" "Oh, yeah," I said. "Those are the nicest ones we sell." He nodded and walked back to where he got it, but stopped. He darted out the door. I was like, oh no, cause I thought it was a faking joke. No. This motherfucker was out the door, in his running car, and out the parking lot in under 30 seconds. My coworker returned 5 minutes later with Chipotle, and I was like, so, guess what? A tale of heroism, idiocy, dedication and love follows. Tending bar downstairs, while my employee is on second floor looking after a party who have booked the whole floor to themselves. Employee comes down. I ask if everything's fine. She says they are great, easy to handle. She goes behind to get something, and I step out onto floor, still ground level. Something large falls and lands out the front of the shop, and two small Korean girls sitting closest are freaking the fuck out. Naturally I go and inspect to find a drunk dude has fallen from the second floor. His girlfriend, who was having a smoke outside, is screaming like nuts, but the dude just gets up like nothing. He seems okay enough to walk, and hospital is pretty close, so I immediately get his friends to put him in a cab and take him there for some head scans to make sure everything inside is alright. They promptly leave girlfriend streaming tears and questioning what the fuck. Let me clarify. The second floor has no balcony. It has 3 windows above waist height with thick as fuck awnings. Basically if you fall out these things you did it to yourself. The dipshit climbed out of my window and supermaned his way to the ground. A nasty fall, but probably not lethal 95% of the time. Either way not faking recommended. Months pass by uneventfully and no lawsuits, although it was fairly obvious to anyone he's just an idiot, and it ain't the States so frivolous lawsuits don't exist, so I forget about it somewhat. Then one day I'm at a party and a random girl who I barely recognize comes up to me asking if I remember her. I'm obviously hazy, so she enlightens me to the fact that she is the best friend of the girlfriend of Superbolt. Turns out he wasn't fine. He broke both his arms and couldn't wipe his ass for 3 months. His girlfriend did it. Keeper. Her I mean, that guy's an idiot. TLDR guy jumped out my window and broke his arms. Girlfriend looks after him for 3 months even wiping his ass. My husband went to make a cup of coffee. He came back to find a friend of ours had burned the plant down. It was a night shift. I left to make coffee. Come back. D's in a panic. Phone in one hand, trying to run the hose in the other. Crackamill is sheeting out flaming material. That's bad. Bosses told us to get the temp down to under 100 degrees Celsius, and once it had cooled off, to pack it in for the night and they'd deal with it in the morning. Well that was on Friday. Our supervisor didn't come in on Saturday. We weren't scheduled again till Monday. Sometime Sunday night we heard the news story. Temp had gone back up. Material had reignited causing $1.5 million in damages before it was brought under control. The inspector ruled it a spontaneous combustion and the insurance company gave them a blank check for the damages. We are pretty sure the guys running the place had mob connections. Oh god, he's not done. That's the same event where we got called in for the hobo watch. Do you remember that? We got a phone call Monday night that, since all the power was out and the inspector was coming in the morning, they didn't want the hobo sleeping in the tires. The security guys they'd called hadn't shown up, so they'd called us in to basically stand guard. Well, we get there just as the security guys get there. We were expecting just to be sitting on some chairs, scaring off hobos, so we are in pretty nice clothes. Then, we get a call from our boss saying he knows the security guys are there, and he asks us to do some cleaning before the inspector gets there in the morning. So there we are, stripped to the waist to save our shirts, in hard hats, working by flashlight with shovels and buckets, in a burnt out factory, cleaning up the evidence the inspector is there to check. And I turned to D and said this is all your fault, trying to type this as he talks, so pardon the hasty grammar. Late to the party, but 2 of many stories. Same kid. We lived in a small gated community on a cul-de-sac court. Very safe, not easy to get in and out quickly. Lots of kids playing outside every day after school. My girls were Amy, 6 and Jennifer, 4. For the first time I figured I could let them play alone in the front yard, on our lawn. I'm terrified of doing this, but I don't want them to inherit my fears, so I pretend it's no big deal. To help them feel confident and me not lose my mind, I'm watching them from the garage door, where they can't see me. They are playing nicely with the ladybugs and collecting flowers. I step inside to grab my camera. Amy walks in all nonchalant. Alone me. Hey, where is Jenny? I told you two to stay together. Amy, there was a man in a van looking for his lost puppy. She's helping him, but I knew I should leave me. Heart drops down past my feet. Cold sweat. I'm running out looking in every direction, scanning houses to see who I can round up to help me make sure the gates lock him in. 2 minutes later. Felt like 2 hours. Jennifer, oh hi mommy. Me. Turns out it was a neighborhood kid who really had lost his dog. He just asked if they had seen it. Apparently Amy said nothing and hightailed it back in. Jenny went out to talk to him. And yes, we had the talk about this exact thing more than once. We had what I call a come to Jesus talk. Okay, mostly me frantically talking / crying. So much for being the cool mom. Hasn't repeated this since. 2. Fast forward a few years. They are now 10 and 12. I figure I can leave them alone in the house for 20 minutes so I can run to the bank. Again, trying to build up their confidence. I make sure they know all the rules. Don't answer the door. Don't use the stove or oven. Call me if you have any questions or get worried. And no booze or boys lol. I set the home alarm system. 10 minutes later husband calls me. So you left the kids home alone today? Me yeah, they are fine. Just popped out to the bank. On my way home now. Well, Jenny just called me and asked how long to put the can of beans in the microwave for me. Called home, hey Jenny, what's this? I hear about you putting an unopened metal can of refried beans in the microwave. And then calling dad. Jenny, I was excited and to tell dad we were left alone and wanted to ask how to make beans. I didn't use the stove or oven. Me, let me talk to your sister. Amy, I told her to not do that, but she said it was okay, so I went to read a book in my room. Lessons learned. Amy will always err on the side of caution and leave her sister out to dry. Jennifer will always push things just up to the edge, or a little over any time she can. Luckily in most cases they will rat each other out. Me and my buddy were building a bonfire, and I went into his garage to get something to cook. At the time he had a fridge in his garage, even though it was a detached garage, so there wasn't much in there. Maybe 45 seconds pass when I hear the fire popping, which isn't unusual for us. We were using kinda wet logs, so I assumed it was just water evaporating. Since he had no hot dogs or anything but his dad's beer in the fridge, I decided to go back to the fire. To my surprise, my friend was running away from the fire, holding a can of gas, and like cartoons the fire was following him. Why he didn't just turn the can up I still have no idea. So he's running like crazy and has the brilliant idea of throwing the can of gasoline into the fire. He hurls a, mostly full might I add, jerry can of gas onto the bonfire. That to my dismay was burning higher than his garage. Up until that point I hadn't noticed it. I might also add we were in his backyard in a highly populated neighborhood, so yards weren't big. But back to the gas can. At this point all hell breaks loose and the can of gas rapidly ignites. And as you might imagine, it did so very violently. I also hadn't noticed that the side of the faking garage was on fire. At this point I'm like OHH sheet. Okay, his dad is gonna kill us. And there's no way in hell either of us are putting this fire out. So he called the fire department and told his dad. His dad is like in tears yelling at him for faking up. Then he starts crying and I'm sitting there feeling really bad. The fire department finally arrives to put out the fire, thankfully. Not too much damage done, but enough to stop us from ever lighting a bonfire in his yard again. We are still best friends, and we have a good laugh whenever this comes up. I still feel bad about the situation, but God was it funny. This was me. I had a fraternity meeting with some pledges, so a couple hours before I started playing beer pong with my housemates. Well, I didn't do well. We quickly ran out of beer and switched to vodka. We switched to 6-cup pong and I didn't fare any better. Each cup had about a shot, but we didn't finish the game because we both had our respective events to go to. Before we parted, he took out a bag of clonopins he'd received from a client of his. Now, he's 6'4" or 6'5", weighs like 260 or something, while I'm 5'4" and weigh 150. He takes a clonopin, and I take one. Then we split a third. I also get another in case I need it. Of course I wouldn't point, so before I leave my house I'm pretty drunk, but still coherent. The fraternity house is about a 3-minute walk away. I walked into the house and blacked out. The rest is from videos recorded, and from what others there have told me. We were doing an event called Egg Jeopardy, where you buzz in to answer questions by breaking eggs on your head. I immediately took my pledge's place and started breaking eggs on my own head to answer questions. My answers were all wrong. All the vodka and beer had kicked in by this point, so I was super drunk and jovial. It was great. I attempted to do cartwheels, only to fall on my head multiple times. I'm unsure if I felt anything or not, but I doubt it since I continued. Anyway, the cartwheels and other gymnastic attempts ended when my shoes fell off. Now the clonopin began to kick in. For those of you that don't know, clonopin, per Google, is a sedative used to treat seizures, anxiety, and panic disorder. I tried to put my shoes back on, but couldn't. So I told my friend that my feet fell off and asked him to help me. It was still hilarious until I fell onto the floor because I couldn't control my legs anymore. When I couldn't get up they started to become a little worried. The concern grew when I told them what I'd been doing before I came over. This is also around the time that I'd peed my pants. Now I began to lose consciousness and the fun ended. I became unresponsive, though was still awake. One of the brothers' girlfriend, as well as her best friend, were nurses. They both took care of me until I was stable again. What this meant is unclear. They never elaborated beyond saying I owed them. But I was alright, though I wasn't wearing my jeans anymore. Eventually everyone left while I slept on the couch with a garbage bag next to me. Around 2 or 3 AM one of the brothers randomly woke up and came downstairs where I slept. While he was coming down he heard a choking sound. Apparently I'd thrown up and was choking on my vomit. So he raced down and turned me over and all was well. A few hours later I wandered home where one of my housemates was woken by my attempts to fit my key inside the lock. He said that I stumbled in without saying anything, wearing only my boxers, and went to my room. In the span of maybe an hour, I went from the life of the party to, well, the exact opposite. My twin sister was the one who experienced the what the fuck moment. We were in Sydney, Australia on foreign exchange, and I had made friends with a guy named Hamish, who was really sweet, but not date guy material. Anyway, I'm mildly drunk already as we are wandering around King's Cross, preparing to take some molly. My sister says she will go to the ATM, and while she's there I see a woman who looks like an American stripper, with the clear heels and the no-nonsense length of her skirt, except she was standing there on the street smoking provocatively. Holy shit, Hamish, I said. Look, a streetwalker. A real one. I get him to pretend to be my boyfriend, so I can try to pick up this lady, curious as I was to how the exchange would go, what the going rate was, etc. Hey there, I say, how are you tonight? She blanks me. Full on sniffs the air and turns away. I'm like, really? That's faked. That's when this tiny man comes barging over, saying Jid Thafakauta here over and over. What? I ask. We heard what you said earlier. What? When I said streetwalker. Yeah. Look, I say, I'm from America. I didn't know this was legal. Yeah it is, the hooker says, in this glorious backwater Aussie accent. Well, that's great for hoes everywhere, I say, and start to walk off. That's when I hear click click click. Hooker is coming at me. I throw off my purse and get ready to get my ass totally kicked, which sounds fun. But right when she gets to me Hamish rolls in and throws her over his shoulder, just as I manage to grab the jaw clip from her hair. Cut to my sister, turning from the ATM. Hamish is getting punched in the face by a hooker, whose bush is like full on out peeking out from under her skirt. I'm making a sad face at the girl, clacking the jaw clip at her menacingly. Twindos, what the shit did I miss?